Well, the question today is, are electronic group sets better? And the answer to that is yes and no. And I think there's a perception that electronic group sets do a little bit more than really what they can do. So let's roll an intro and let's have a little bit of a talk about what electronic group sets do better and what mechanical group sets do better and what is the difference in their design and why electronics group sets can do something better and why mechanical group sets can do something better. Okay, so we're paying a premium price for electronic group sets, and as we know, the manufacturers of these group sets, especially in the top tier group sets, they want to move to electronic. They want to move from mechanical group sets to electronic. And not only that, they want to abandon supplying mechanical group sets alongside the electronic group sets. So you can go in there and just say you're buying Ultegra, which is a really popular one for enthusiasts. So you can buy the electronic Ultegra, you can buy your mechanical Ultegra, and it's the same with force. You can buy your electronic force and you can buy your mechanical force. Same with Campagnolo. But the problem is with Campagnolo is that they actually don't do that. They only offer mechanical at the record level. You can only get the EPS at the super record level. So they're a little bit different in the way that they've modeled their products. But when we buy these electronic group sets, we have to pay a significant premium. And I'd probably say the premium generally is between 20 and 40% for the electronic systems. And of course, if you have any breakages or your bike falls over or you have a problem with the battery because the battery's now past its best and it's not holding a charge and you need to buy a new battery, those sorts of things are very expensive with the electronic group sets, whilst the mechanical parts are generally cheaper, like a derailleur could be $200 or $300 for mechanical, and then you buy the electronic ones, it's $700 to $800, and that's AUD. So what you're doing is your cost, your hand in your pocket, gets a lot higher. Now the question is for that premium price, what are we really getting to say, hey, look, you know, this electronic group set outperforms, outdoes this, outdoes that, and it's just better. So let's have a look at those criteria which compare the mechanical with the electronic. Now, the first thing that people will notice is when you get onto a mechanical group set, the interaction or the user interface with the product is that instead of having to push a lever and you feel that, then you just have to push a button, so you don't have to move your hands so much. And this can be a real advantage for people who have arthritis or have some disability. They just have to click a button and it will do what it's supposed to do as advertised. But with a mechanical system, say, especially if you want to change a number of gears, you need to push it and then push it again and push it again, and you can have quite a high swing with your hand to do those multiple changes. So that's an advantage. That's a user interface advantage that you have using the electric over the mechanical. Now let's talk about the indexing systems. Now they both have indexing systems. Mechanical have a mechanical indexing where there's a cam and probably a turning cog inside the brake levers, and when you press that, it allows it to turn a certain distance, which is a certain pull ratio, and then at the back, because the cables move that much, that's aligned up with the spacing of the cogs or with the front gears on the crankset, so it changes gear. Well, the electric system does exactly the same, except you can fine tune it. You can set it with more accuracy. You can dial in that distance it changes. You can make it more or less, so you can fine tune that change. Whilst the mechanical one is set at the manufacturer, you can adjust that as an end user. So that's an advantage. You can fine tune it in. Although the cassettes are set, they can't change, they can't move. The only thing that can change is the actual frame and design of your bike, because bikes do vary slightly from bike to bike, where the hanger sit and so forth. So you do have more setting up flexibility with an electronic group set. Now the third advantage, well, this is what people believe. It seems like this is what people believe, but it's actually not true. So it's not really an advantage, is that they think that the electronic group set has some smarts in it and aligned with the cogs or aligned with the gears. And this is incorrect. They have no sensing system to align with the cogs. So if you knock the derailleur or something's been serviced or repaired and not put back in exactly the same spot, the gears won't change. It has no clever thinking that can realign to the movement. Like you take the wheel off, you put it back in, and for some reason hasn't lined up properly, or there's a bit of dirt in there and it's slightly pushed over at the back, or whatever, or the crank's been taken out and they shimmed it differently and it's slightly out of alignment. The electronic system has no smarts to correct for that. You have to then reset the whole thing up, readjust it so it's aligned. It doesn't have any smarts. The fact that they're saying it changes better is really a little bit of a myth. It only can move a predetermined distance at a predetermined speed. The only thing that really changes is that with the mechanical system, the amount of force or torque could vary. So the speed of the shift, you could push it harder or softer, so it might go slower or it might go faster. But with the electronic system, that's completely consistent because the motor just does exactly the same thing every time. Now, one of the bigger disadvantages, right? Well, I see it as a disadvantage, is you have to run a battery on the bike. It has to be wired up and there's got to be a battery somewhere. There's got to be batteries. Now, I charge a whole lot of stuff up. People may say, charging all this stuff up for your bike anyway, what's one more thing? But it just makes the bike a little bit more difficult to manage because you need to be able to bring that bike close to a power point or take a power bank to the derailleurs and charge it up. And also Shimano has moved that charge port to the back to rear railer, which I think is not a great idea because you have lots of dirt and contamination there. And if people aren't going to put their little weather seal back properly, that over time could create an issue with dirt and muck getting into those little Type C or micro USB connectors. I'm not too sure what Shimano have used in the new group set, but it means that then you are playing around with an area where there's a lot of contamination, whilst mechanical systems, you have none of that. Yes, you can have contamination on your cables, and that can impair your shifting over time, but if you get it serviced and you get those changed out, that's not really too much of an issue. I've never had that issue with my group sets. I even really haven't had any issue with cable stretching, which is kind of a common thing. They don't really seem to go out for me for some reason, and I don't need to get them adjusted like, a few weeks later. They just seem to work. Well, anyway, regardless of that, that is a thing that people have had some experience with. So yes, let's just say the electric is better there with the cables, and the cable system is better than the electric because of your filling of electrics, and you've got to plug things in and you've got to take it to a power point. Whilst if a mechanical bike, you don't. You can hang up in the garage after a ride, you can get it down. It's going to work as advertised day after day after day. You don't have to think, how much charge is in the battery? Do I need to bring it inside? Do I need to bring an extension lead? Do I need to bring a power bank to charge up that electronic system? So in conclusion, what are you really getting for your money? You're getting a better user interface with electronic system. And I think this is the main reason why people like to buy these systems. It's more of a feel thing. So when you're changing gears, it's like driving a nicer car, a quieter car, or a car that's got power steering and it's got power assisted brakes, because even the acceleration now is not a cable or linkage. It's done by wire. Everything in the new cars is either assisted or it's done by wire. So what it does is it makes everything feel nicer when you're driving the latest cars compared to a car that was 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And it's the same with these bikes. You've got hydraulic brakes and they're hydraulically assisted, and you have electronic gears that you just push a button, and the user experience is much enhanced when you're riding the bike. But as far as operation goes and speed of shifting, really, this is really negligible, if any. Now, some people may say, hey, look, you've got a motor and it changes it quicker, you get less chain drop, all of those sorts of things. Well, I would probably argue that they're pretty much myths, because the speed of changing a mechanical system is parts of a second. And even though you may say the electronic system could change even a smaller partage of a second faster, in the real world, that's making really no difference to your performance of your changes. It's really, it's negligible, it's insignificant. And the other thing as well is because there's no smarts in the electronic system, it doesn't stop chain drop. And we know this because look at all the chain drops we've had in the pro peloton just recently, or in the professional circuits. They get chain drops all the time. And if you follow a guy called Cam Nichols, he was telling us about his favorite bike, which is a BMC. But when he had SRAM on, he suffered from an incredible amount of chain drops. And he was so worried about the chain drop, he wouldn't even ride it in that format in a race because he was so worried it was going to drop a chain. So these electronic group sets don't do anything magical. They don't change any quicker. They don't stop chain drop. They don't stop all of the things or all of the issues that we've had in the past with mechanicals. All they really do is giving you a nicer and better user interface, or if you're a person who has some disability or arthritis, it makes riding the bike for you practicable because you can't then push those levers. You haven't got the force in your fingers, or you get pain when you push those levers to change the gears. So when you've got a button, you can still ride your bike and enjoy cycling, which is a great thing. So what we need to weigh up is that user experience really worth the price extra? Now, I've ridden some electric group sets. I tried quite a few, especially when I owned my C60 Colnago, and I was actually going to put electronic system on that bike, and I kind of specifically really wanted to have the SRAM system. I like the idea of the way the SRAM system works, the user interface, but I must admit, when I rode it, and I also rode a Campagnolo EPS and the Shimano Di2, the user interface experience didn't wow me. In fact, I actually didn't like the SRAM group set. I didn't like the hoods. I didn't like the way the hoods feel. And to me, the SRAM system seemed to change very slow. It felt like it was a slow change. Now, that could have been perception, but whatever it was, I didn't like it. And that's why I didn't buy that group set in the end. And in the end, I bought a Record Campagnolo group set. So that's what I ended up with. And now I've got the 12-speed Campagnolo Record group set, and that group set's the best group set I've ever had. It's absolutely amazing. It like never misses a beat. It's fantastic, right? So to me, I can't see for me paying to go to electronic group sets. Let's just say I was going to buy one now, say a 12-speed Dura-Ace or Ultegra, or a SRAM 12-speed E-Tap, or a Super Record Campagnolo EPS. I can't see the value in the extra money spent because it's not a few $100s, it's thousands. In most cases, you have to pay thousands more to get these electronic group sets. And in my view, I don't think what these electronic group sets is offering is really worth the value you're having to pay extra. If they were like $500 extra, 100% I'd have electronic group set on my bike. Why not? But they're not. They're considerably more expensive. And when you're buying a bike and you're pricing it up, and just say it comes to 10 grand, and then you're going to have to pay 12 grand to get that electronic group set on, I can't see the value in that. I'd rather put that money to something else on the bike, maybe have more premium wheels or something like that. That's just my view. But I do know a lot of people like the user interface of the electronic systems, and that's why they're popular. But what I have an issue with now is that the manufacturers are really trying to narrow the road and limit the availability of products on the market. And I can actually see that because I can see that the frame manufacturers are really pushing it, because there's a lot more work when they make a frame to make it be able to accept a mechanical group set. They need to put the riv nuts in. They also need to put some fiberglass sheeting behind the riv nuts to prevent corrosion. So they need to make sure that those pieces are put in where there's any riv nuts on the bike to stop the corrosion. And they've already had to put some sort of anchor nuts already on the frame for the disc brake systems. And now they have to put more and drill holes in the frame. It's just more machining. It's more work. If they can just have these electronic group sets, they don't have to do any of that. And with the integration, it all goes inside anyway. So they don't actually have to do anything with the frames. And this is why the industry likes it. It means that they don't have to make for the group sets, they don't have to make two. They don't have to make like a mechanical. They don't have to make a electronic. They have one train. That's why they want to get rid of rim brakes as well. It's because they're only offering one product. And even at the different Ultegra, Shimano 105, they're pretty much the same because they're exactly the same design. It's just badging and material change that they're putting in there. So that's why they want it. To them, it's a very good business decision to limit the amount of variance that they have in their train when they're making their products. And that's what I do believe the biggest driver in. It's got nothing to do with electronics really being that much better. It's because they're making more money for less effort. And apart from the research and development, I would probably argue that the electronic group sets are actually cheaper to make. So they have a bigger margin of profit as well, because electronics is like dirt cheap. Even communications like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. If you go to AliExpress and you want to make something operate off Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, you can buy these chips for cents. They're literally cents to buy these. And even manufacturers of all electronic components want to actually put all of these communications in all products, and they call it the Internet of Things. You've probably heard of it. And what it is you have all of these products in a suburb, and because they're within a close proximity to each other and they're in all electronic components, they use a node mesh system to communicate. So instead of using the internet, you can use this node system and you can communicate things like how often a person opens their fridge, or if that, whatever, how much a toaster is used, do you need some more bread, whatever. It's another form of communication that people can collect data about us people and what we're doing. And even with our bidirectional communication, they're probably collecting data on us and where we're all riding and so forth. And I think with these heat maps, you can see that on Strava anyway. So this is where they're heading with this Internet of Things. So, and the reason why they want to put them in all these appliances, because it costs nothing. These communication chips are incredibly cheap. And this is why I can't see the value. We kind of know the design or the research and development of making these systems work and putting these electric high torque motors in, which is probably the most expensive part. They're probably the same sort of motors they use in the radio controlled world, which are high speed, high torque. So the motors may be of some reasonable price, but the electronics would be cents, literally cents. I don't really see how they can charge these prices they are for electronic group sets, especially when the design was done almost 10 years ago and the technology now is really fairly well established and they would have already recouped back their research and development costs. I can't really see why they're putting these significantly high prices on electronics. I thought eventually they would have come down to very close prices of mechanicals and then would have replaced the mechanicals because there was no price difference. But bicycle manufacturers obviously think that thinking something different. Well, guys, I'm going to leave it there and I'll catch you next vid.